Alright, welcome back to Sweet Incarnation Anime Review Episode number 2. We're discussing here episodes 3 through 5 of the series. Yep, we're getting close to wrapping this up. Oh yeah, so 3 is mostly put just an aftermath episode of the previous episode where, like, all bands were captured, that weren't killed, and they're all tied up, put into a shed until the king's army comes by. Well, at least probably one of the local officials come by to pick them up. So, Patri's friend, the one who's the girl of the group, she got injured. Actually, no, she got injured. She got injured later. What is her name here? Lammy. That's her name, Lammy. Yeah. So, basically, it's like, yeah, of course, they get rewarded. They get basically the bandits thing as a reward for helping out. Patri does not receive anything at all, so... After all that's settled, and then, of course, basically, where they had discussed... Actually, no, that's not it yet. So, pretty much, basically, Lemmy and... Lammy and Mark... Yes, Lammy and Mark... decide to pay visit the bandits. And because apparently Mark has got the bandit leader's sword, somehow he gets loose, he wounds Lammy, and then, of course, basically, he runs off with him on a stolen horse. And, of course, Pastry decided not to basically leave things alone. He hops on a horse, chases after them. And he briefly fights the guy when he catches up with him. And like, to get away. So basically where Mark's father basically chased after them, and somehow, and I think, because the sword breaks, that, presumably he might be dead. You go back, nope, he's back home, sitting in his mother's lap, and she's falling asleep, basically holding him. So basically, it's explained of how the heck got back for it needed. So it's revealed because it kind of shows off last episode with the whole replication thing. So he apparently copied his father's magic, his teleportation magic, and I'm like, yeah, that's something else also Cayenne can do. He can teleport purely at random. Yep. So they get back, of course. Mark, of course, apologizes. And, of course, Patrick proceeds to come to the interesting idea to basically, in order to heal up, basically, Lammy's wounds by giving her apple pie. Except that in this particular world, they're not called apples. They're called Bronic, I think they're called. Oh, it's called Banca. That's basically an apple. Which I'm not sure exactly why it's called a banca, even though you look at it, it's an apple. Heck, even possibly almost referred to as an apple pie, but it's banca. And then, of course, Lammy's father comes in. When Lammy sees her grandfather, of course, I'm sure he does spoil her. So, Lammy's father thinks interesting idea to atone what Mark did by having these two get engaged. As a joke. And they kind of take it seriously for a little bit. It doesn't really get mentioned after this. So, after this stuff happened, so basically, it's shown that basically the reason why that they were organized was because of Patri's, even though he's a pastry chef, he is basically that culinary skills of his to basically formulate strategies. And, of course, also, he had formulated an idea because apparently the territory is broke. After fighting out the bandits, they have no money. So, and, of course, pay back the villages. So, then they, of course, pay a visit to the local countess, which they reveal about her, where her sibling mysteriously died, and apparently she was a regent for basically her nephew. And then her nephew mysteriously died, and now she's a countess. So, of course, basically, thanks to Pastry's coercion with her, like, over the fact that he tried her sweets, and basically, in a way, also before this, he developed basically integrated the cover for the whole replication, because of course it's going to become not exactly him using magic as public knowledge, but him replicating stuff that's not going to come up with public knowledge. So basically what he does is that he basically takes a piece of board and basically uses magic to make a portrait of his mother. His mother loves it, but requests one small alteration. A little thing around the eye. They call it like a crow's thing for some reason, even though that's clearly just the edge of the eye, and you have to call it like a crow's hawk or whatever. He does, no problem. It's not the first time he's had to alter it. Apparently he does, like, over the course of 2 episodes, he had to alter, like, 2 different pictures. So then, of course, we creates Countess portrait for her, and thanks to some talking, and of course, sort of despite the fact they have overwhelming evidence, basically the fact that she actually failed at her job being, well, surpassing bandits, he kind of in a way blackmails her to basically pay them 150 gold coins, which is probably small pennies for her, but that's basically how it is. So then she's off. She's not. By the way, I gotta admit, the Countess is a very pretty lady, and he's very polite with her, and he is acting like a complete gentleman. He does basically say that, well, he does briefly talk about her sweets. They're a little too sweet. But in actuality, they're probably disgusting. Like, turn down the sweetness a little bit. Okay. And, the tea was excellent. Just the cookies, basically, was the problem. Yes, a cookie with a little fruit jelly in the middle. I am personally not a fan of these type of cookies at all. I've never had a desire to try these things. Just, it's not because, basically, it's what caused the issue with my weight. That's not the issue. I don't try these damn things. I think I may have tried it once or twice. I just don't like the texture of these particular cookies. I am very picky when it comes to something like that. Yes, I'm very picky when it comes to cookies or some sort of type of food. Despite how I am. I can't help how I am. It's just how I am. So, and he tries to explain it, but he gets a little too in detail in it. So his father proceeds to bob him on the head. One of, like, 2 times he does this. The other time was for a bill that his father had to pay because he used his own money to pay for stuff for sweets. Yeah, a bill. So that comes up later. So they come with an interesting idea to basically make matchmaker portraits. Just, they can't exactly travel because maybe they're busy. So they can't go in person. So create this portrait of exactly like the person they're going to meet. And just by sharing up, this first time it actually works. Because then he goes to a duke's, a count's party. Where he chooses his awesome grandson, which I'm sure he probably spoiled when he was a little kid. And the fact that apparently his grandson is a big fan of casserole. Yes, big fan of his. And his name is Squabble. Yes, this guy's name is Squabble. Why the heck, basically, why would someone name their kid Squabble? It makes no sense at all. Makes as much sense, basically, to name a kid named Pastry. Or name a guy named Casserole. Yes. I still think it's quite baffling. Some characters name after food. Yeah, casserole is a piece of... It's not exactly a food item, per se. It's a food thing. It's a thing you make in an oven. But, moving on. So, basically, he paid visits to the Margrave's territory. and he got a chance to meet the Margrave's daughter, Patri, which I'm sure that's a phrase for pantry, which holds food. Because of course it does. And he uses basically a waiter's towel to create a portrait of the Margrave's daughter, and then of course like, oh, this is Sway just to get engaged, and turns out kind of is, and he kind of basically convinces the Duke, yeah, this is actually the Duke, to kind of basically allow this to happen. And sure enough, they get engaged because it works. And of course, they got paid for it, for hooking these two up. And also, they have to basically guard her. They pay an extra 50 gold coins to guard her. So, where is the most secure place to hold her? Because she's going to come of age. The gauge is basically secret right now. Their gauge secret. They become public when she come of age. So, this is quite interesting. So, then, of course, also it's revealed apparently he had to go through the portrait several times to make it less, to basically do her father's approval, which he found to be hassle. So, go to this particular room and have basically security guard her in this room. It's not exactly she's trapped there, a prisoner. She's basically just a guest who's basically under guard. And, of course, they arrive at the particular cathedral that they're going to go to, and then they're attacked by a bunch of mercenaries, which, of course, Casserole, Patri, and Pastry, and like one person holds them up. Also, we see Patri's sister, Licorice, who's voiced by Emily Lowe, which last series I heard her in was not that long ago. By the way, this actually is the 23rd series I've heard of it. You're like, really? 23rd? Oh, yeah. You might think, was Apothecary's the last one? No, not really. The last anime I heard her in was actually, she professed herself the pupil of the wise man. Yeah, that was the last one. And her name is Licorice. Yes, licorice. As you know, the stick candy you can actually just chew on, or you can pull apart. How do I know about licorice? Because I've actually tried it. And plus, it is also one of my dad's favorite candies. Yes, he loves licorice. He occasionally buys bags once in a while, but tries not to buy too much because they put on weight. But he does eat these things. Yeah, he loves eating licorice. He buys it maybe, he used to buy like these one big bag, not like big huge bags, basically bags the size of my arm. He bought them like once a month, and he would eat like a few a day. From what I can tell, he didn't go overboard with it, but if I ate them, I would eat them probably like in a day or two. He probably eats them very slowly, so I could basically savor them, because he loves licorice. So, and because the fact that the girls are, and of course, the reason why the pastry is there, because they probably want to be with someone who's around their age. Not a bad idea, even if it's a boy. And two pretty girls, who are apparently twins. So, the thing is, Licorice is raven-haired, compared to her sister, who has pink hair. Yes. Also, here's a weird fun fact about Pastry. He has white hair. I've seen this in like 2 other anime where the lead character has white hair. One of them is obviously the Aristocrats of the Worldly Adventure. That's an obvious one. The other is the world's finest assassin gets reincarnated as an aristocrat. But of course, also there is a Freya, but wasn't from that was basically black from that was black at the start, and then basically throughout the majority of the series, it's actually white. Yes, his hair is white for a majority of the series, but not from the very start. That's the difference. Yeah, not counted very much when it comes to lead characters in anime. A lot of the time, the most popular hair colors tend to be black, brown or blonde, or occasionally a redhead. But white is not something I come across. It's a very rare occurrence. I mean, if you think of like popular shonen, what's usually the most popular hair color for shonen lead characters? Black. Because a lot of Japanese men basically got black hair unless they dye it. So, and of course they arrive at the place and they go down in the basement where apparently this place is. Licorice is scared and get this. And of course basically she thinks she's about to hold her hand, but actually it's Patri who basically looks after her, and there are hints. Start of a hint. The Licorice might be falling in love with Pastry, which I read the manga. Not going to spoil it per se. I'll talk about that next episode, but yeah, that's kind of what happens here. The start of basically the first hint of possible romance. Well, even though the two kids are the same age, but yeah, she starts falling for him, despite the fact he's only 9. But he's a smart 9-year-old, basically, who's a smart negotiator with his awesome father being there. And also the reason why he's so successful with leading his territory is because his son has been guiding him. You think, really? The son's been guiding him? Yeah. Probably because basically he's a battle technician, not a normal administrator. Though, of course, basically, Patrick gets his style of the way he does stuff from cooking. Yeah. So, also, Squabble becomes friends with Pastry in their first meeting. Because, of course, he's a little bit older than he is. Like, I would say he is just about 5 years older than he is. 5 or 6, maybe. But they kind of ponder this idea over the fact that, Castro has taken his daughter Josephine around the various nobles to possibly get her hitched. They'll basically get engaged, but not married yet. Because I'm sure basically marrying a 13-year-old probably not be a good idea at the moment. Getting engaged is probably perfectly fine. Just set it up for the future because, arranged marriages. Also, they do bring up about his grandparents. Like, one asked them for money before all this happened. Well, apparently, his parents cut ties with their respective parents because they're very snobbish. And also the fact they actually were, both sets of parents, were against the union of these two. Yes. And also, they've never met their grandchildren. And that was probably by choice. But I wonder if basically he'll eventually meet his grandparents. I'm sure he probably set them right, but who knows. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to notifications. Next up we have as more of Sweet Reincarnation. Yep, next video. Bye.